Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Lost to the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Josh Myota. Tonight's special guest is Peter Garcia, who has an experience with the cryptid known as the Dogman. I'm very excited for Peter to share his experience with us tonight because in my home state of Wisconsin, we have a similar case known as Beast of the Bray Road. With that being said, let's hear your experience, Peter.
Alrighty. Well, I lived in Spokane, Washington about a few years, and I worked at a hospital, and it was mostly night work. But this night, I had to stay a lot later than I usually do, but got off about 1 o'clock and drove through Spokane, and I noticed the moon was really full, and I'm thinking, wow, moon looks beautiful. Didn't think nothing of it. You've seen 100 moons, you see them all the time, nothing out of ordinary. I'm driving through Spokane and I head to the last store before you head out into the country. And I lived in Fort Washington then, which is like 60 miles out of Spokane. So I grabbed my Pepsi and my candy bar, keep me awake because sometimes it's just a long drive. And that's usually what I use to pick myself up. And I was going down the back roads, which is known as 7 Mile. And it's total backcountry farms, ranches and stuff. They're not too far apart, but your nearest neighbor is about a mile, 2 miles away. So I'm heading out, and some places are dark, some are lit up. Most of the time, it's just dark, and it's just dark woods. And there's a forestry kind of like a fire station out there. As soon as you hit that, it's just like total country. Like there's no phones, no nothing out there except for farmhouses and there's a stretch called Big Sky, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm glad there's farmhouses out here. There's one farm in particular that the road cuts right in half, like their farm is right cut in half by this road, and then it's a 20 mile an hour turn, and then you cross a bridge, and then there's like a farmhouse and a bush right next to the road. I'd say maybe 6 foot from the road. I'm crossing this bridge, and I notice a big brownish gray poofy tail, and it's in the bushes, and you can tell like it's eating. It's going to town on something in the bushes. And I'm going, man, is that a wolf? Oh, whoa, it is a wolf. And I'm thinking to myself, I wasn't going to take a picture of nothing, but I was going to watch it for a while. Like I would go, man, how often do you see a wolf, let alone eating something? And it's just like you can see the bushes like moving, like I'm going, wow. And I pull up real quiet, and it had the tail and then like the hind legs of a dog, like the wolf, like you normally, but the top body was a guy's body, and he was like hunched down eating, like just hunched down, and I could see like it's hairy on its body, but you could tell it was a guy, like a guy's body. Then he kind of turns, like he turns, and he has these red eyes, and then he stands up, and he had like a snout, but it was a dog snout, like a husky or something, uh, and it was kind of pointing, and it stood up, and it kind of went like it went, oh, like I could tell that it was really angry that I seen it, like I had snuck up on it, and it was eating, and I was sitting there watching it for a couple of seconds. Then it charges, and all I had time to do was like go and hit the gas. And I mean the road kind of goes up there, so I hit it and I kind of jumped this road, and I'm like, whoa! I just saw a werewolf. I'm going, but you better do 100. I kept yelling, you better do 100, Wolfie, because you ain't catching me. And I knew it was chasing me. Like I had this feeling, like I think this thing's chasing me. I'm doing 100, maybe like 10 or 20 miles down this stretch, and then it goes down. And I remember going, woo, 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 woo. I wasn't slowing down. I was like, I'm thinking if a cop comes, great. But I didn't really want a
Right?
cop to come. But I'm like, if he comes, he has a gun, he has this, but he's going to think I'm crazy telling him the story. And I'm thinking, the whole way I'm trying to rationalize this. I'm going, you just saw a werewolf. Nah, nah, yeah, you just saw a werewolf. No, no, yeah, you did, yeah. So like the last part of the ride is like through the res, and I'm going up Long Lake, and there's like a you cross a bridge, and then there's another road on the other side of the lake. And that's where I lived,
Hey,
right at the beginning of the res.
hey, Peter, can I ask you some questions before we move on quick?
Sure,
How close to was it on the reservation when you first saw it? Was it actually reservation land where it was eating, or
it's considered res, but it's all like farmland, so it's like right at the edge of the reservation.
okay?
I'm saying maybe 5 miles away from where it's considered reservation. Well, right where I seen it, it's maybe 12 miles to Devil's Gap, and that's where they kind of consider it. So that, yeah, right at the edge. I mean, I don't know how if it was from the res, but I do know that it was so close to one of the farms. I'm like, how did they even go outside at night? And like for a couple of weeks, they had like carcasses out there, like animals that died, or cows or whatever, calves, and there was like carcasses on the side of the road. Well, those weren't there that night. And I don't know if it was eating those things. I don't know if they eat stuff like that, but I know they weren't there like the next day. So I mean, I don't know if it attracts them, if they're just so hungry that they're just compelled to eat it.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really close to the res.
That was my other question for you too. Could you make out what it was eating when you saw it eating?
No, I mean, whatever it was in the bush. Like it was
Like it dragged
like
it
right
in
under that
to,
bush. Yeah. I mean, when I first pulled up, the first thing I noticed was those glowing eyes, and it was dark because the moon was behind it, so it wasn't like the moon or my headlights hitting it, because my headlights were pointing towards the road, and it was like maybe 6 foot to my right, away from the jeep. I mean, it was close. Like it lunged so fast. I mean, it was like maybe a few seconds before it charged the jeep. I mean, really, I pulled up, looked at it, it stood up. I went, oh, like, whoa, God, like, oh man, I don't believe I just saw that. No, yeah, I kept trying to rationalize it the whole time. Like, no, yeah, oh yeah. So,
completely understandable. I mean, not every day you see a werewolf.
so I get up to the res, and where I was staying with this native lady, she's Lakota, and a bunch of her grandkids. Um, I pulled up, and I remember being scared to just get out of the jeep. So I sat there and waited for this thing to come. I go, if you come, man, you went past all them dogs back there, and it's not going to be easy. And I was like, maybe if I stab it in the mouth or stab it in its neck, get it in the eye, you know what I mean? Like I kept trying to think, well, maybe if I just get it, and go, it's not going to be free. So morning comes, and I okay, I guess it's safe. I got out. It's light. Put my knife away, and by that time, the Lakota woman, the old lady, was making coffee, and she's like, "Hey, good morning." She's like, "You just getting in?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You want some coffee?" "Oh yeah." Because I heard you pull up, but I didn't hear you come in. I go, I've been sitting out there. Because I got to tell you something. Like I saw something last night, and I told her the story, and she's like, "Oh yeah, 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 I believe you." So you want to know why I believe you? I was like, "You believe me?" "Yeah." "Why do you what?" She was like, "We knew it was out there. We know the Wolfman's out there. We just didn't want to tell you that because we didn't want you to be scared driving to work every day because of your job." I'm like, what? You should have told me. Like I would have been prepared. There would have been a gun with
Right.
silver bullets, and so that knife would have been covered in silver. She's like, yeah, yeah, we knew it was out there. The older ones, they call it the werewolf. I mean, I don't know the difference between a dogman and a werewolf, um, but they know it as the werewolf. And she calls her sister and tells her the story, and she's like, the sister's like, huh, like that's unusual. Like that's usually you don't survive seeing the dogman. They'll find your car and what looks like an animal attacked you, they'll blame it on a badger or a coyote, and because there's not supposed to be wolves in Washington, but I'm like, no, there's a wolf in Washington, and I imagine it's not the only one. So she's like, that's curious that you survived it. I mean, people don't usually survive, and I'm like, man, I gotta drive down that road tomorrow night. So the next night, I drive past that spot quick. Woo. Well, once I passed the spot, the weather got weird. Like it wasn't supposed to snow. It wasn't even supposed to be that cold, but it starts snowing and sleeting. The road kind of got slippery, and I'm thinking, what the heck, man? And then the wind kind of picked up. I'm like, if this snow catches on fire, I give up. You can have me. Like I guess these things are known to control nature. It just depends on their age. So I'm like, well, I can make it home. I was kind of taking it easy because the roads are starting to get slippery. Then my back tire blows out, and I'm like, it starts going downhill. You don't get cell reception down that hill, but you get it on top. And that was pretty much. I turned the Jeep around, and it was facing where I seen that werewolf, but it was a few miles down. I'm expecting this werewolf to come. So I step out for a second. I do my business, and then I get back in, and I'm like, well, if it's coming, it's coming. I had my knife. Well, that's all I have is a dang knife. I didn't have time to get anything. But I noticed, and this is not part of the Wolfman story, but I noticed these trees behind me. They're dancing. And I could see them through the rearview mirror, and I turn around, you can't really see them, but in the rearview mirror, you could see them dancing. Like I go, well, it wasn't that windy when I was out there. So I told one of the people on the res that story, and they're like, oh, goes, yeah, the trees were starting to dance, and he did the dance before I even showed him the dance. He goes, oh yeah, those are stick Indians. Yeah, you're lucky you didn't go over there. So they usually eat people. I'm like, stick Indians? What are stick Indians? He goes, yeah, they're like souls of old natives that got caught, and they become cannibals and they eat people. They're known for it. I'm like, what? He goes, the res is filled with all kind of supernatural stuff. They were like, if you would have did your business over by them trees, no, they wouldn't have found you. They would have found your shoes, maybe, your clothes, but not you. I'm like, oh man, like he goes, yeah, you got to be careful on the res at night. Did you whistle? I go, yeah, I was whistling. He goes, yeah, man, you can't whistle after dark on the res, man. That'll bring them. That like brings them. They come. They know something's out there. It's like
Wow.
something with the whistle pisses them off. Like that's too much happy out there for them. And I remember going, yeah, I did whistle because I was like, man, I'm glad I didn't, like didn't see that werewolf. And then boom, like what the hell? And they're known to like throw stuff at tires. So when we saw this tire, it's blown to bits. It's not even like it was flat. It blew up. It shattered. It went into a billion pieces. The only thing was left was like the outer portions of the tire and the rim. Even the natives are like, I've never seen a tire blow up like that before. I'm like, yeah, that whole night, man. I just stood in the truck waiting for stuff to pop off. I didn't even know. But when morning came, I called her. She picked me up, and I told her the stick story. And I told her about the weather. She's like, yeah, if they're old, sometimes they can do that. Like they have powers. I'm like, man, so I started taking the other route into Spokane. I'm like, you know what? I'll just take the other route because there's just more cars. And before I just kind of liked that there was no cars out there. I'm like, oh no, heck no. Now I was like, no, bring all the cars because then there'll be like 10 or 12 of us seeing this stuff, not just me out here by myself because I'd be the only car out there sometimes. And I used to
well
like it.
now, well now we know why you were the only car out there.
Yeah, like, nah. 1 in the morning out in 7 Mile. I mean, people wanted me to go take them to go see. I'm like, okay, one, your car better be 100%. Two, you better have weaponry. Because if the car messes up, well, guess what? We're fighting. Like there's gonna be something. Something's gonna come out because after that it was the stick Indians, the werewolves. Bigfoots don't usually mess with you unless you're messing with something they like. Like berries or something. You're going past markers they leave. Because there's a place out there where you could see it from the road. It's on the mountain where you see pine tree. They're all pointing, and then one that's round. Well, the granddaughter of the Lakota woman said, "Yeah, we went up there. We checked it out. The tree is picked up, and those are the roots of the tree. It's still out there. I mean, you could still go by there and see that with a Bigfoot marker. You're not supposed to go past that because they start throwing rocks at you. I mean, that's like one of the red stories they tell you. Yeah, don't go up there, man. So, that's like their home. They guard that. They'll throw rocks at you.
That's very interesting. I heard that too, that they're very territorial.
Yeah, they don't like werewolves. That's why I was like, oh, they don't like werewolves. Well, I still ain't
That's
going out
interesting
there.
too.
Yeah, they don't get along. They fight. I mean, they go at it. But a werewolf don't have a chance when a tree's getting flung at them. You know what I mean? Like a full pine
Yeah,
tree. I
be
mean,
an
this is like
interesting
one of
fight
those
to see.
100-year-old pine trees. Like it's not a small tree. It's a big tree. And I remember we were in Idaho, up by the Montana border, right there, right off the highway. There's like a town that's kind of haunted into the mountains. We were out there harvesting Christmas trees. And there was once where I was by myself and I was harvesting this Christmas tree. I had it all packed. Well, I was digging it out, and then I had to go do my business. And it was a perfect tree. I go, oh, it's gonna be a $10 tree for me. And I come back and the top is broke. And I go, oh, like, uh-oh, I pissed something off. Well, there's a foot out here. I go, so I just kind of backed up, like, well, all right, I'm leaving the tree and I'm leaving this little spot, but there was huckleberries all around. Like it was almost time for huckleberry season. But I kept telling the guys, I go, that tree was perfect. I went to go do my business, came back, and the top of the tree is broke. I go, it was a big tree. I go, I couldn't have done that clean break like that. And it was way tall. Like, it was tall. I was like, I couldn't even reach that. I'd have to have a ladder to go up and then try to break it clean like that. So, yeah, I mean, they're out there and they'll warn you before they do anything.
What do you mean they'll warn you?
Well, that was a warning. He was like, okay,
Oh,
that's enough
yeah.
Christmas trees you're taking from here. And I was like, oh, you don't want me to touch this tree. Like, okay.
Think you would have took that tree? We got a pegged with a rock.
Yeah, I probably would have got rocked. And yeah, and I was by myself. I mean, they probably wouldn't have found me because
Probably
we had
not.
taken already like maybe 30, 40 trees already that we had marked and bagged up and stuff. So yeah, we were probably making them angry. I mean, that place was haunted anyway. It was like the old trail into Montana from Idaho, and then they built the highway. But that used to be the road that the pioneers and the cowboys used. So there's like a jail. There's a whole town, like on the side of a
is,
mountain.
is the town still occupied, or is it one of the
There's
mining
certain
towns
people
that
that
got
live there.
abandoned?
Yeah, there's certain people that live there, and they're like on the road, and then it goes like there was a jail in the side of the mountain that was like a cave, and they're like, you want to go up there? Nah, nah. I ain't want nothing, nah, because they'll stick to you, man. You'll take that stuff home with you. Like, so I don't really go do stuff like that 'cause I know they'll stick to you. So I don't go to funerals and I don't really go to cemeteries too much. Like if I have to go, it's because one of my relatives. But if it's a friend, if I don't need to go, I won't. And then afterwards, I'll kind of cleanse myself and Palo Santo and sage and sweetgrass and all
Yeah,
that.
can't be too careful. Got to stick up with the
Yeah,
cleansing. That's another thing I was going to ask you too. Do you think cleansing would help at all with the first situation with the
the
wolves,
werewolf.
or
It
no? You
has to be
think?
wolf's bane. But
Oh,
even if you touch wolf's bane, man, it'll poison you.
Yeah.
I looked into it. They were like, "Oh," I was like, "This is the most poisonous plant in the world," and people were just known to die by grazing their leg against it in a garden. I'm like, "Nah, I ain't carrying no wolfsbane. So I'll just take care of me too." But yeah, wolfsbane does it. I
Well,
don't know for sure, but yeah, I don't want to test it either.
right. But like you said too, wolfsbane will poison us, so it's like maybe mustard gas would work, you know?
Well, yeah, they were telling me there's people on the res that are trained to kill these things in case like it attacks one of the people on the res and they'll go after it. They don't mess around. So there's like people trained to kill them. Imagine it's a few of the hunters that go out and hunt moose and are used to big game. They'll they'll go hunt these things. And they'll take machetes and guns and you're supposed to. I heard they told me they cut them up and they have to burn the body and then they got to do a cleansing so that spirit doesn't jump into them
Interesting.
because it's supposed to be like a sickness. To them, it's a sickness. Like that spirit will jump into them. Like the person that kills the werewolf is the most susceptible. Like it'll jump into you if you're not prepared. Usually they're
Kind
prepared. They're already you know blessed and have marks on them and you
very
know
similar to a possession. That's what you're kind of
yeah
describing too, and an exorcism.
yeah
Did you get a
yeah
chance to meet one of these hunters?
no
No.
no. Usually the ones that don't like talking to. I'm a half breed, so they won't talk to me. Yeah, you have to be full blooded to even talk to some of the elders. They'll see it as a bad thing. Bad things will happen. But like
When
that Lakota lady, she told me all kinds of stuff, and then her sister. So it's where I kind of picked up on a lot of it.
you had the experience with the wolf originally, was there any sound that you can remember, or birds chirping, bugs?
Nothing. It was quiet. It was quiet. I mean, usually it is quiet, but yeah, it was quiet. I mean, there was nothing out there for sure, but it was 2 in the morning by the time I hit that spot. It's like maybe 3/4 of the way home, more or less.
I've heard this. Is why I asked that it's like eerily quiet. Same with Bigfoot too. That there's no bugs, there's no birds.
Well,
Just
the next day that when I saw the stick Indians, it was like that because I was doing my business outside the Jeep and there was no sound. I mean, there wasn't even wind blowing. That's why I was like, why are the trees dancing? I don't remember it being windy outside. So it was just like an eerie calm. But then it was also snow, so I don't know. I mean, it was a weird night because it was not even winter. Like it wasn't supposed to be snowing.
like what time of the year was this?
It was already past the winter. I want to say it was past or before. No, it had to have been past, like turning into summer. And then, where I wasn't really worried about the snow anymore. 'Cause I remember when it started snowing, I'm like, what? Snow? What? What? Like, I thought this was over with. But yeah, it is Spokane though. I mean, it's known for snow, and it was a weird because it only snowed there, and then it stopped when the tire blew. So once the tire blew, it stopped snowing, but there was still like a blanket of snow on the ground.
That dusting,
Uh,
huh?
yeah, and then the
Good old
sticking.
Wisconsin's like that too, where it can just snow at any time.
Then back there, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of things going on in the country. I mean, there's a whole town out there that I had dreamed about and knew where everything was, but that's like another story. I mean, when I first moved to Spokane, it was vampires that we were kind of tripping on. Me and the girl that I came for, to live with, and we dealt with that. Then I left and came back, and then was there for years. and then saw a werewolf. So I'm like, you know, that Twilight stuff's real out there. This is for real. It's not even playing. Yeah, I mean, coming from California, I didn't really experience that much stuff. I mean, in Arizona, I did, but that's kind of known for it. I mean, the UFOs and stuff. But
Phoenix
I
Lights, we
didn't
talked
really,
briefly about that.
yeah, but I didn't know Washington was going to be another one. Like the last thing I would expected to see was a Dogman werewolf thing, like close up too, because it wasn't that far away. I mean, I could see it really close. It was really buffed. It had all these muscles and a mouthful of teeth, like a ridiculous amount. And that's all I remember seeing was muscles and a lot of teeth and them red eyes and then like ah, and then yeah, and then like having dreams after that. After that experience, I had a dream that I was chasing it, and it was the same werewolf, the same color. I remember the muscles, but we were chasing it downhill. It was a few of us, and we had weapons dipped in silver, and I threw a throwing star at it. And it sounds like me with throwing stars. Like I probably would have got a throwing star and dipped it in silver, and I in my dream I hit it in the back of the head, and it killed it. But when it died, I wasn't prepared. Like I wasn't like the other guys; they were prepared. It jumped into me, and I remember going, "No!" And I'm like, "No, the crow!" And I was howling, and at the end of it, I was just howling. I woke up like, "Oh man!" Like, no, no. I had to move. I, maybe a week later, I got out of there because I know in my dream it had killed somebody I loved, and I had a feeling it was my daughter it killed. That's the only reason I'd be out there hunting it. Like if it would have killed my daughter, oh yeah, I would have been out there first one. You know, prepare shishmare. I'd be out there. You know, and for the
Absolutely.
longest time, I was looking online for like silver knives and silver spoons, and I collected a few silver rings in case I had to melt them down and do that. And like I had that dream, like, oh no. Usually when I have a dream like that and I remember it, it'll come true. So I had to leave to change that. And I moved to Medical Lake where I had heard that there was Bigfoot sightings and they were in town. So I was like, well, I guess I found the place. I go, if there's Bigfoots in the town or out right outside the town, then that Wolfman won't come near it. Because there was another place I moved to, maybe like right after I left the res, which wasn't too far from the res. It was still in Ford, but it was at a house with a guy with a bunch of guns. I figured he had a bunch of guns. Something pops off, he'll be more than happy to shoot at something. And one night, I'm looking into the forest because his house was in the middle of a forest next to Long Lake, and I hear this crunching, like something walking, breaking branches. The only branches out there were these big logs. So whatever was breaking these logs was pretty big. And I'm like, oh man. And then I hear a baby crying. I go, a baby crying? I'm going, this ain't 1863 with cowboys and I'm going to go out there and rescue the baby in the middle of the forest. You just keep the baby. And I yelled it and then it just started going. Then the dog comes up and it's like, it grabs me by the hand. He's like, come on, like pulling me. He's like, come on. I go, yeah, I think you're right, dog. Let's go inside because this thing's getting close. I'm like, oh, dude. So I told the old guy I lived with, like the next day, and he's like, why didn't you call me? I would have been out there with guns. I go, yeah. And I probably would have been trying to find you after you went out there with guns trying to find this thing. I'm like, nah, I didn't tell you for a reason. Like, you would have tried to go hunt it. Nah, I didn't feel like explaining your disappearance to your neighbors. They would have thought I killed you. So I didn't tell you. So yeah, we moved out of there pretty quick, and that's when I moved to Medical Lake. It's not really town, it's not really city, so it's pretty much what I was kind of looking for. And then I moved to Montana and had kind of a similar dream of werewolves, but it was more or less it was a white wolf. It was huge and it was sniffing me. And I woke up and it was surprised that I was awake in that realm. Like I could tell it was like, "Whoa, you're awake!" And then it turned around and stood in front of a big old group of them. And I was like, "Oh man, there's a lot of you guys." And I woke up like, "Oh wow." My daughter had the same dream. She told me, "Hey, Dad, I had a weird dream last night." I go, "What?" She goes, "There's a lot of werewolves here in Montana." And I had heard that this was like the capital of them. Like this is the kingdom of werewolves over here. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to see them. I'm in town, so I'm in the city, so it's not like I'm out in the country. But I don't think I live out in the country out here just in case. I mean, I don't feel like seeing another one again. People are like, oh,
Understandable.
there's groups where you'll find people. Hey, if you want to become a werewolf, look me up. I'm like, no, why would anybody want to curse? No, man, because you got to do stuff. You're susceptible to the moon, especially when you're new. Like, there's no controlling it. I can see an older one, if he wants to change, he can. You can change into anything, but the new ones are kind of restricted to what they can do, and they're kind of susceptible to the moon.
So, did your daughter know that you saw that one in
Oh yeah,
Spokane?
because they were all
Okay.
awake when I was telling the story. It was like they were getting ready for school, and I was just telling the story, and they're all listening. Like what? I go, yeah, I
So,
saw a big werewolf.
was she inside with that Lakota woman then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There was like two granddaughters and then my daughter, and then like a little kid, and then that was it. So I kind of worried about him being out there, but then she had weapons too, so I don't know what all she had, but I know that she did. But I was always buying her a knife or something like that just because of that. She never could understand, and like, because I saw that thing, so I'm gonna give you this big old knife. There you go.
Interesting. And you think he
Yeah,
wanted you? You, you said earlier too to me off camera, right?
yeah. Well, I got a feeling it was really old and it's tired. That's the feeling I got from that dream I had. It was like it was tired and it wanted to pass on, and it needed somebody to do that with. And yeah, for a while I thought it was yeah, because where I moved really wasn't that far from where I seen it. It was just on the other side of Long Lake. I don't know if they can swim or not, but I know it can go around the dang lake easy. Come across that bridge. I mean, I don't know how fast they run, but
Right? I don't
and I
think I
know,
want to test him
yeah,
either.
and I know
You
it was
said
the
he kept up with
daughter.
your Chi pretty well too, didn't you?
Yeah, I know the daughters. A year later, after I seen it, her daughters were headed towards Spokane to the casino, and they ended up seeing it, and it chased them pretty much, I don't know, 40 miles into Spokane, and it stopped at the river. But the daughter was like, "Yeah, I was watching it out the rearview mirror. I mean, out the rearview window because she was in the back seat." And she's telling the daughter, "Step on it," and it's like, "This is as fast as this thing goes." They're like, and it's like, because I remember watching it. It's like it was running, chasing us, and they're freaking out. I'm like, they're like, "I wonder if that's what Peter saw." Oh yeah, that's what I seen. Oh yeah, like for sure. And I remember they were like, "Oh yeah, right," you know, yeah, sure. Like, no, I seen it. And then they ended up seeing it, and it was like, "Oh yeah, now I'm not crazy, huh?" I'm like, "I'm not crazy anymore." You go, "No, we seen it. We believe you now."
Terrifying.
But yeah, that's my werewolf story. I mean,
No, you can't just leave us with I was dealing with vampires and leave us hanging.
um, well, when I first came to Spokane, and it was Jennifer Rothschild that I ended up being with. they had been chasing her. That was the gang stalking, was these vampires. And they were probably feeding on her like energy wise, but they wanted more. And that's when she was like, I can't deal with this anymore. They're, I feel like they're coming around my house. My dog goes nuts. She ended up getting a dog that would, protect her. And we went through a lot of weird stuff in Spokane. I mean, there was people following her, like genuinely. Something would tell me go outside, and then I'd go out front, and then somebody would be headed towards the house, and then turn around abruptly and just walk back the other way, the way they were coming. Like, if you were walking on the sidewalk normally, you would have just kept going, not see me freak out and turn around. And there was just
Right.
a lot of that. There's just a lot of that, and she ended up getting really sick, and we went to Providence Hospital, which is right there in Spokane on a division. It's one of their main hospitals, and they had been giving her two pills that I guess taken together will swell you up, and so they were kind of killing her. I don't know what was going on, but she was swelling up. She was telling me I feel bloated, like I'm full of water, and she was. And one of the last nights we were there, she was in ICU, so it was kind of cold in there. I was staying with her every night that she was there. She was like there for 2 weeks. And one night I woke up, something just woke me up, and there's a guy in there, and he sees me, and I see him, and he kind of like bolts. And I was like, what was that about? She goes, I don't know. He seen you and took the hell off. And I was like, well, relax, it's all right. He's like, I didn't even know what he was doing here. He was asking me all kinds of weird questions. I don't know. So we're sitting there quiet, and I guess they figured we were asleep, but we could hear him talking. And the nurse goes, well, what happened? She goes, I think they know we're vampires. And we both looked at each other, and it's like, don't say nothing. And he's like, I think they know we're vampires. I'm like, oh crap. Oh yeah, we're getting out of here. And I'm like whispering to her, like, we're getting out of here tomorrow. She's like, I want to leave right now. Like, I want to go. But they're not going to let us. And it's like, really late. So, I mean, it would have kind of been impossible. The next day, she is just like putting up a fight. Like, she wants out of here. She wants to get the hell out of there. And she did.
Understandably.
So we were at her house for maybe a week, and then like she was still sick and out of it. So we went to another hospital, Sacred Heart, downtown, and they were like, I don't know why they were giving you these two pills. It's poisonous and it'll swell you up. She goes like, yeah, and I'm thinking like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, that girl with the berry, turns into the berry. Well, they were
Yeah.
burying you up to drink you like a 40. I go, they were. I had that feeling like maybe they were drinking you like in champagne glasses, because they kept taking blood samples, and yeah, it was a strange time. I mean, it really was. I mean, even before that, you know, with all the watching and the cameras that we saw, like she told me there was like this little workshop next door on the other side of a fence. She goes, there's a camera pointed right at this house, right at me all the time. And I'm going, well, how do you know? And then the door, the wind blows it open. There's a camera pointing at the house. And I'm like, you're not lying about this stuff. She's like, I told you. I go, they're watching me. And then like the next day it's closed and locks. And I go, man, you couldn't make it more obvious that like you're watching this lady. And it was just a bunch of stuff like that the whole time. I mean, Spokane for me at first was like the Truman Show. Like we were being watched like that. Like we'd walk out into the front yard, and it was like, all right, action. And like the lady with the big old arm radio and headphones and a kid, and then cars would start driving. And she's like, there's never any traffic or people walking. I don't even know who this lady is. But every time we come out here, It's the same lady in the dang spandex and the big old radio that looks like a camera, but it's supposed to look like a Walkman, but it's a big, huge thing. And I'm like, yeah, every time I come out here, it's like the same kind of, you know, the cars will go by. There's a lady with the Walkman and the kid. There's another lady with the Walkman and the kid. And we go, and then we go inside and then there'd be nothing. Walk outside, action. So I don't know. A lot of weirdness in Spokane. So before I moved to Spokane, I had a dream about a town out there. I was in a car and I was coming to a one of those old style bridges with the wooden, you know, they're all wooden covered, you know, it's a
Hmm.
wooden bridge. It's like a, and I go in there and it's like a mouse trap. Like I drive in and there's one of the walls is closed off. And then I turn around, that other wall is closed off. I'm like, what's going on? So I somehow make it out of there. Going through this town and I notice a church with a gold doorknob on it. And I walk into the church and this little girl is sitting there and she's like, how did you even open that door? I go, turn the knob. She goes, you're not even supposed to be here. How are you here? I go, do you want to leave? And she's like, yeah. So I grab her by the hand, open the door. She's like, how are you opening the door? And we're walking through this town and I'm seeing like a store, this old style building. This guy looks like a Mennonite. And she's like, that's a vampire. Like a what? A vampire. He looks up and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what are you doing here? And then I woke up and I'm like, whoa, what was that all about? So when we moved out to Ford, my daughter had to go to the school in what was that? The name of that town? I can't think of it for the Springdale. And it's me and the Lakota woman, and because her kids go to her grandkids go to that the school out there, and I'm like, where's this school at? We've been going for like 20 miles. Where's this school at? Because it's out in the middle of nowhere. As you'll see. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. My kid's gonna go out here. The bus drives all the way out here. It's like every day. So we're heading into this town, and I recognize the town. It's the town from my dream. I'm telling her where all the stuff's at. I go, there's a little store over there, and a bunch of little houses that look a certain way. There's a blue one right in the middle of a path. She's like, yeah, that little store, yeah. I go, there's gonna be a church on our right with a gold knob, and there's gonna be a door right where like you could just pull in and open the door and walk into a room. And she's like, yeah. And we pass it. She's like, how did you know? I go, the school's right up here. And right past the school, there's a bridge that's covered, right? Like an old school bridge. She's like, yeah. I go, no one uses it because it's closed, but you can still kind of drive down it. I'm like, I've been here. I go, this is the vampire town I dreamed of. She's like, what? And then I had to stop. I go, well, I don't want to freak her out, but yeah, the vampire town. So Jennifer Rothschild, I had mentioned this dream, and I go, "Yeah, we lived in Springdale." She was like, "What?" I go, "Yeah, that's where Sophia was going to school at." Sophia's my daughter, and she's like, "I'm from Springdale." I go, "That's a vampire town." She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Were you the little girl in the church?" She goes, "That's where they used to feed on me in the church." I'm like, "That's a vampire church. It's not a real church. It's like a vampire." I'm looking at her like, man, I dreamed about this already. and and I took you out of this church because it was a little blonde girl. And I go, no wonder she looked familiar. She was just younger. And then she showed me pictures of when she was younger. I go, yeah, that's you. I go, that's the little girl that was hunched in the corner. I'm going, man. So Sophia still had to go to school in this school in the middle of a vampire village that is only a vampire village in a dimension. Because that's kind of what I figured that bridge was. It was like a entrance to their dimension. 'Cause I had mentioned it to another lady in Seattle. And she's like, I heard that there was places like that still, but I didn't think they were still around. Like I didn't think there was that kind of a vampire town left. I go, oh yeah, it's called Springdale and it's out there. I go, I freaked out because I knew the whole layout of this little town. And I remember they never treated me like Right. They always treated me like I wasn't there. I'd be talking to them, but it wasn't like they couldn't hear me. I'd be at the school like saying, "Hey, this little girl's picking on my daughter," and they're acting like I'm not even in the room. I'm like, why are they always like shining me on like I'm not there? Like I'm not saying anything. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, oh like brushing me off. I'm like, man, I think they're all vampires. Like I'm pretty sure they are, man. Like yeah, like I said, Washington, it's a strange place, and I don't recommend being out in the country by yourself. Like unless you're prepared, like you know that's what's out there. 'Cause I won't drive out there at night ever again. Like when the natives would call me and say, "Hey, can I get a ride?" And it's like, nah, it's already dark time. You're on your own. You're gonna have to wait till morning. I'll take you in the morning, no problem. But I'm not driving out there at night because
Don't
even with
blame
a
you.
even with a daughter of Lakota, she lives on the other side of the res where it starts going in the mountains. She says there's Bigfoot out there. I'm like, no, I believe you. No, I'm not even doubting you. I'm pretty sure that he's out there. Like, I'm pretty sure. Like, I ain't going out there. Like, no, I'm all right. And that's Wenatchee. Like, it's out there. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. But they tell you, I mean, they tell you don't drive out here at night unless you're from the res. Maybe you'll have some protection. But if you're not, full res, full native, I wouldn't venture out here. Now I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, I know there's reses out here, but we're way far from a few of them, so I'm kind of thankful. We have natives here, but it's not the same.
I suppose with all them
Totally different.
experiences, you don't mind city life anymore, huh?
No, not at all. I mean, I used to think, yeah, I want that, country life. No, not unless I have like I'm prepared. Like if I have stuff, and I'm talking a 50 caliber. No, 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 you're right. Anything come out here. But yeah, to live out there, I couldn't do it again. I wouldn't go outside after dark. I'd be like, no. Like I won't go camping. You couldn't pay me enough to camp, and they kept inviting me in Washington. I'm like, no, you guys can have it all. Fishing, go camping. I'm not going. Why? And I tell them, they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. I go, you can think I'm crazy all you want. I seen it. You can't convince me. One guy was like, oh, you saw Bigfoot. No, unless Bigfoot looks like a wolf with big old teeth and has a big bushy tail. No, this wasn't Bigfoot. Listen to what you're telling me. I'd be like, listen to what you're saying. You're saying I didn't see a werewolf, but I saw the Bigfoot. You won't believe that I saw a werewolf, but you believe I saw a Bigfoot. Like it's not really that big of a stretch, man. Like listen to you.
I mean, it's not even hard to believe. There's stories in every nation about them. The Beast of
Yeah.
Bray Road, the Michigan Dogman. The Greeks actually talk about the wolf people competing in the first Olympics with them.
Whoa. I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah,
the Norse have their whole werewolf stories of Little Red Riding Hood from Germany. There's
yeah.
something.
No, it's out there. I've seen it. I mean, if you know where 7 Mile is in Washington, just
Go
go out there
find
on a
them.
full moon. My friend did. She's crazy. She's like this little 5'10", and she went. She goes, I'm gonna go out there. I go, don't go out there. Are you crazy? Oh, you can't go out there. She's like, she did. She drove out there just to see if she could see it. I'm like, you are crazy. Did you take any weapons? No, I just took my car. Like, you got a new car. I'm like, people are nuts. I go, until you see one, you'll be like, no, I don't feel like seeing it again. And I don't feel like going through that again. I mean, I was literally afraid to get out of the Jeep. I'm like, I ain't getting out. That's where you die. That's how horror movies start. Oh, I'm safe
Right.
now. Whoa. Like, yeah, even if we had dogs, we had dogs outside. They weren't barking at them, but I'm like, no. What if it has powers and it makes everything go to sleep or something? Like,
right? You
nah.
never know.
Yeah, I stayed till morning. Like, if it's gonna pounce on me, it'll be during the day. I know somebody's awake in the house, so I'm like, no, like, that's all right. See,
I had
yeah, the
one
phone.
more question
Go ahead.
too, dealing with the vampires. How did you meet a Rothschild? And is it the Rothschild family that, you know, the
Yeah,
infamous, famous it is?
she was related to them. She was like a step daughter of one of them. We met online. I had been adding Rothschilds of my Facebook. Something kept telling me to add Rothschilds. I know a bunch of them. Like Alistair Rothschild, he's in London. I know that's for true one. Peter Rothschild, which was in a dream I had with Jennifer. And they had told me some stuff in the dream, and yeah, that dream was crazy with Jennifer. I told her about it. I go, I was in a Jeep. Now I own the same kind of Jeep in the dream, only that one was red. This one's black. But in that dream, Jennifer was like, "Get in, I got to show you something." And we go off, and it's the country in San Diego, a place called Escondido. It's supposed to be like a big Illuminati base there. And she takes me out into the country in this dream, and then we come up on this sign with a bunch of rules. She's like, "Forget them rules." And she takes me, and then she's like, "Okay, you get out here." I'm like, "What?" And then I'm in front of this like demon looking thing, and it goes, "I have to show you something," and it tears the veil, and I look through, and I could see a pyramid, a black pyramid, and like a compound with a blue kind of glow to it. And I go, "Oh, whoa, what is?" And then all these black beings started coming out. I don't know if you ever seen Constantine, those demons
Hmm.
without the head. That's what they look like, and they started spilling out. And as they're
Black
spilling, they're
headless
coming together.
apparitions, huh?
Yeah, they started coming together like it was darkness, and it was like encroaching. And I'm running towards the light, like, "Oh no!" And I kind of did a spin thing, like Matrix, jumped out, and I'm back with Jennifer, and she's like, "I had to show you that." They tore the fabric of time, and now these things are coming through. And she took me out of there, and one of them was Peter Rothschild that she was with, and that's her friend, like they're friends in real life. And he's telling me, yeah, it's all connected, and like he shows me this big canopy, like a umbrella, red and white, and everything's in it. The airlines, the trains, the stores. He showed me the people are like little robots, and they have dollars, and they're going on a conveyor belt, and click, dollar, click. He goes, "It's all under this canopy, and if anything messes with the canopy, it'll all be destroyed. Like, you can't mess with nothing." And I'm like, "Why are you telling me this?" And he's like, "Well, you have to know. This is what the world is like. We own everything. It's under this big umbrella." And I'm like, crazy. Like, and I wake up, and I'm like this umbrella, Umbrella Corp, same umbrella, and it was everything. Like, he had explained, we own everything, and he owns like part of the Pacific Ocean up to the middle of it, and then one of his other relatives owns from that into England and a certain spot, and then like they own everything. And I think that's what he was telling me. Well, after that dream, that's when all the stuff started happening. Like, we went into Spokane, and all the following that was happening, and they started following me. All the stuff that I was going through Spokane, because I had left after she got sick. She was like, "I have to take a break," and I came back to California. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I left all that in Washington. I'm not worried about it no more. Hopefully she's all right. And one day I'm at the school, and for some reason, if someone's staring at me secretly, my gaze will go right to that spot. I can't even control it. It'll just happen by itself. And that was happening in Spokane left and right. I got tired of it after a while. I'm like, man, I wish I didn't do that. But when I did it, it's like, I'm like, and then boom, it flipped people out. Like it make them jump like, oh. And there was once I was sitting at my daughter's bus stop and it did it. Boom. And this guy jumped. And I go, oh, you're following me. I start chasing him. He's running. I was a block away. Like if he didn't have anything to hide, and he was just kind of looking at me secret, and I looked at him and he jumped and he just kept going, no problem. But I start like running towards him and he takes off, man. Like he bolts. I'm still going full throttle. I run pretty fast. So he's like, oh, and I could tell, and I'm going, I can't even chase him that far. My daughter's bus is coming. I have to be here. And I'm like, oh, they're following here. Then I started noticing that they were following. Like it hadn't stopped. And I'd been, I guess, followed since San Diego from what she was telling me. She's like, this is not the only time. They were following you in San Diego. I mean, San Diego's its own story. Like everything that happened there was after everything that happened when, in Merced, where I was living in California. I mean, when the gods came, Anubis and all that, and then it just all kind of led me to Spokane, and then eventually led me here to Montana. Because it all kind of tied in together. Even the Phoenix Lights thing. I mean, all the stuff that when I seen the Phoenix Lights and had the time loss and all the images in my head, all the words that I've written down on Facebook had did something. Like all the words, if words are power, well, there was 5 years of words that I had put down and it kind of changed something. And it all kind of tied in because all the images and stuff that I use now for protection. Like if something happens, I'll use what I learned from when I went through with the Phoenix Lights. So I mean, it's been one adventure after another. I mean, the CIA guy in San Diego, he was a Russian guy, and I remember we were at a party, and yeah, it was just a bunch of weirdness. Yeah, like I said, it's another story. I mean, I'd like to go into it, but we probably have to talk about it before I say anything.
Okay, that's good. Like I said, you have a lot of stories. You definitely be back on.
Yeah, it's since 2000 and no, since 1994 when I told you I went to India is when it first kind of started, and I seen the Shiva, and I've been looking for those pictures. I'll send you some of them pictures of Lord Shiva coming out of that Chilean volcano. I found a few of them. And
Awesome.
it's a blue building. He has a trident in his hand, and people in Chile had seen this guy. He was like, "There's a god in the volcano," and I kept posting, "That's Lord Shiva," but they're from Chile. They don't know who Lord Shiva is. They're like, "Oh, it's just a volcano god." I go, "That's the dang god I seen in India," and he said he was gonna do his dance and turn into a volcano. And then the Chilean thing, like, that was like the beginning of it. It was 2015 when he started his dance, and that's pretty much when like where it started getting intense. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I mean, I got to kind of break it all down so it's all.
Right.
But I
It's been an
figure
absolute pleasure having you on. Is there any last thing you want to leave us with?
if I can relate anything is if the werewolf, if seeing Lord Shiva, seeing the Phoenix Lights and going through that. If all that's real, then what else is real? That's every time I see something like that, I'm like, well, if that's real, then what else is real? Like, what else is happening? It's a lot bigger world now. Like, I stepped into a larger world, and everything that people think is fiction or a story, I think it is based in something. I think it's based in something real because that wolf was real. Those vampires, they were real. I mean, if that's real, then what else is? You gotta ask
Exactly.
you gotta ask yourself that. And I keep, you know, wondering what else is real. But then when I say that stuff happens, so and I said it like 4 times already, so I don't know yet. Montana's a new adventure, so I think that's probably why I married somebody that's really not into it as much as the other ones I was with. It's been a normal experience, but lately we've been having like the lights flash and noises downstairs, and I'm looking at her like, oh no, it's just the dogs. But in my head, I know this place is haunted, and we're hearing that. And she's like, oh no, it can't be that. Okay, well then don't listen. It's the dogs. The cat's down there. Something. But we're getting lights flashing, and I'm looking at her, and she's like, "Is this place haunted? What's going on?" I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know. I do know, but I don't want to freak her out." And she's still in her normal, like life's normal, and there's no paranormal stuff, and I know that's not true anymore. Like I know it's not true. It, it's an it's paranormal, but it's part of our world. So really, it is it us that are paranormal and everything else is like something that we hear all the time? I mean, so if
That's an
that's
awesome
real,
way
then
to look at
what
that.
else? Yeah, it's been fun.
It's been
Um,
awesome. Thank you, Peter.
and then like later we can talk about other stuff.
Okay,
We'll look forward to that. Anyway, have a good night,
awesome.
guys.
Good night, everybody.